now 6 o'clock. Welcome to tonight's councils, Thursday, the 27th of August, and we've got a number of items on the agenda tonight. Jackie, please could you go through the roll call? Remember, you are being recorded for YouTube and we are live on the YouTube channel. Jackie, could you go through alphabetically? Could everyone be ready to, as per the procedure, to check in and just say they are here and present? Thank you. Jackie.
Chair. Councillor Allison?
Yes.
Archer?
Present.
Atkin?
Yeah, I'm here, Jackie.
Bright?
Here.
Buckler?
Yes.
Bull?
Yeah, thank you.
Martin Burfoot?
Yes, I'm here.
Sue Burfoot?
Yes, thank you.
Buttle?
That'd be me.
Donnelly?
Yeah.
Elliott?
Yes, loud and clear.
Fitzherbert?
Here.
Litter?
Present.
Froggatt?
Here.
Vaness? Councillor Vaness?
Here. Yes, I was muted. I'm here.
Gamble?
Here.
Hill?
Yes, receiving.
Hobson?
Present.
Hughes? Just arrived, I think. Councillor Hughes, can you hear me? I'll come back. Lees?
Yes, thank you.
McDonough, I don't think Councillor McDonough's here, is she?
No.
Tony Morley?
Here.
Del Morley?
Present, Jackie, thank you.
O'Brien?
Yes, I'm here.
Hawley?
Yes, I'm here.
Purdy?
Yeah, Jackie.
Ratcliffe?
Here, thank you.
Raw? No. Councillor Rose?
Yeah, here at the moment.
Shirley?
Yeah.
Slack?
Here, Jackie.
Statham? Don't think I've seen him. Sutton?
Here.
Wayne?
Here, thank you.
And Wakeman?
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Hughes, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Jackie. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's that.
Jackie, could I have the apologies, please?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillors Chapman, Cruz, McDonough, Salt and Swindle.
Okay. Right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Just before we go on to public participation, I'd just like to add, after James's email to us all today, a little bit about the procedural matters. I thought it might be prudent to endorse his comments and to add a few words to that. There are a number of items on the agenda tonight, and I trust that as before, members will make pertinent and apt comments, speeches once called to speak. I do ask once again, please, that there is no repetition of questions once answered by the officers. I've taken comments from members since our last few meetings. As a result, I will pause more regularly after items, depending on timings on the timings of the various agenda items for a loo break, as I feel that that will sharpen up debate and be more comfortable for subsequent items. But I ask that we are back at our desk in 5 minutes. So it may be that we have two tonight, maybe we just have one, but I'm perfectly aware of that. It's difficult, you know, as we go through this process. In the meantime, James will be drawing up plans to give us training in this new world of Zoom meetings, and he will be contacting us all shortly for that procedure. Once again, please bear with us tonight. It is extremely difficult chairing a full council of 45 people or so, and once again, I'll try and do my best. Moving on, item 2, public participation. We've had a number of questions, and just like to ask Councillor Purdy.
Chair, can I ask, is Jim putting the questions up on screen?
I am.
Thank you for that, Chris.
Yeah. Do you want them now? Yeah.
Please.
Yes, please.
Okay.
There are six or so questions tonight, and the first one, I think, is a question from Dorothy Skrytek.
Thank you, Chris. So what I propose to do, Chair, and with thanks to Chris for putting the questions up, I'll thank the participants, the questionnaires, and then refer to the fact that all responses are posted on our website and can be found under the committee section. That will save me going through all the responses tonight, Chair. So thank you to Dorothy Sprytek of Derby and South Derbyshire Friends of the Earth Redestruction of Public Footpath Signs and Blocking of Footpaths. As I say, our response is posted on our website. I'd also like to thank Kieran Guilfoyle on the review of statues in the district of Derbyshire Dales. Again, you can find our response on our website under the committee section. Thank you to James Miles on behalf of Athersidge Rewilding Group and Hope Valley Climate Action. It's a statement of support in respect of our biodiversity of road verges and public open spaces. Again, our response is on our website. A question from Sue Bliss, a Matlock resident, again on biodiversity and practices within the Derbyshire Dales district. So thank you for that. A statement from Gillian Beer, a Great Hucklow resident, on biodiversity and practices within the Derbyshire Dales District Council. Again, our response is on our website. And the final one, Chair, is Dr. Sheila Evans on behalf of Derbyshire Dales Climate Hub, the non-traditional homes improvement scheme, and on biodiversity and practices within the Derbyshire Dales District Council. I thank you all for your questions, and if you are not happy with the responses on our website, I do encourage you to come back to me. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Purdy. Moving on to item 3, which is interest. I have none tabled at all. Are there no other items of interest that should be noted? Lovely, thank you very much. Moving on to item 4, the approval of the minutes of previous meetings, Council, the annual Council and the extraordinary meeting of the 12th of August. I so move as a true record. Does that find a seconder, please?
Second, Chair.
Thank you very much. I suggest on this one we take this just as a collection of hands on Zoom. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Can we move on? Councillor Purdy.
These announcements, Chair. Thank you. Between now and Christmas, this authority faces 3 key challenges. 1, the Boundary Commission have agreed upon the total number of members for this authority in the future to be 34. James has called a meeting of group leaders to discuss this, but I would ask each and every member to contribute to this debate and submit ideas as to where lines might be drawn on a new boundary map for Derbyshire Dales. It comes as no surprise to me on the figure of 34, as that was the figure put forward by the Boundary Commission officers at our initial meeting. In order to help members with this issue, I think it would be helpful if a mapping exercise took place with some suggested modelling. Number 2, this exercise, though, might be affected by a government white paper that is due in September, October time on devolution. There is much speculation throughout the country with regard to this, and I've been on several meetings, district council networks and MHCLG meetings. Some authorities are taking on board devolution and some others, like Derbyshire, have got our own vision. I believe it's important that we keep speculation, though, to when the white paper is produced and we see what is actually contained in it. Vision Derbyshire is critical to the devolution white paper, and it has reached a critical stage as to its next move. A move that will hopefully see all Derbyshire leaders sign a joint letter to government requesting a meeting in order to present our case for Vision Derbyshire. I will keep members, opposition leaders and this authority updated as to the progress or otherwise on Vision Derbyshire. And finally, Chair, white paper on sweeping planning reform is out now for consultation. I'm aware that Mike Hayes is currently working on this to see what it actually means for our planning authority. The white paper entitled Planning for the Future is on the gov.doc website, and I urge all members, especially those members of the Planning Committee, to take an early view on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purdy. Moving on to item 6, Chairman's announcements, Councillor Froggatt.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as things are with COVID-19, I've had no invitations anywhere, so I don't have anything to say, unfortunately.
Right, okay, thank you very much. Well, let's hope for better times. Item 7, committees. To receive the non-exempt minutes of the committees as listed on our papers. I so move. Does that find a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Thank you very much. All those in favour, can I suggest a show of hands on this one? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And we now move on to question 9, which is questions. We've had from members who've given notice. We've got one here from Councillor Gamble, and I ask Councillor Purdy to respond, after which Councillor Gamble is entitled to a supplementary. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Gamble. Well, of course, we've been along this route before, but the contract for weed spraying states that the supplier shall ensure that no treatment of town centre areas will be permitted at any time other than between the hours of 4 AM and 7 AM. This is to avoid pedestrian footfall in these high tourist areas. Although there are no set times for the rural areas, the contractor should ensure that all laws and regulations relating to the application of herbicide products are strictly adhered to, including using an approved pesticide that has been approved by the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, and also cost regulations and the control of pesticide regulations. District Council staff no longer use glyphosate, but in the past the operatives sprayed early in the mornings at the start of the shift or in places where there is low footfall, and after undertaking a dynamic risk assessment before the commencement of any spraying. A report on future use will be presented to the Community Environment Committee in October. I am also aware that officers are investigating the concern you have raised, and I will update you in due course.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Gamble.
Actually, yes, I have had it actually chat with Ash about this, and he has assured me he's going to come back. So yes, if you or Ash could come back about the issue, then that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 10, non-traditional homes improvement scheme. Rob Coggins, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members will know from previous reports of our work on Hurst Farm and working with residents to improve the non-traditional homes. We undertook a pilot project that finished earlier this year, which saw the completion of 11 homes, and the feedback from residents has been very positive. I've been working since March to bring together a phase 2 programme, focusing again on Hurst Farm, but on the 4th of August, the government announced a major new competition, part of the Green Recovery, as it's been termed, of a £200 million programme. This is very much a competition for local authorities to bid into, but the timescales are very challenging, so we have to have submitted our bid by the 1st of September. Funding must be spent by the end of March next year. So if we're successful, and we'll find out at the end of September, it'll be a very challenging period to get on site and complete the works. The focus of the programme is to reduce carbon emissions, create jobs, and address fuel poverty in EPC banned properties E and below. We're in a fortunate position because 23 households had already signed up to our proposed phase 2 programme. So we're well progressed, and since the government announcement, I've been working with residents in Hogneston and Ashbourne, as well as Tansley and Derbyshire Dales, to sign more residents up to the project. And I'm pleased to say that 49 households have now put their name forward to take part in this programme. Key to the project as well is the involvement of Platform. They have obviously a lot of properties in the district, and quite a few of those are in EPC band E and below. We need them on board to meet the minimum bid requirement of this project, which is £500,000. And they're also key to our own funding arrangements, as I've set out in the report in paragraph 3.9. The disposals programme that we operate in partnership with Platform creates a revenue stream or a capital stream into the council, and we can use that for this programme. Since the report was produced, I've also been working with the Harrison Arms House Trust in Matlock. Some of you will be familiar with that smaller homes house scheme, and they have a renovation programme that we've been working with them on for some time. And I'm hopeful that we can also include a couple of their properties in this programme and bring some government funding into that particular scheme. If we're successful with the programme bid, we will be on site in mid-October, and we should have a programme that runs through to mid-March with a very slight area of slippage in case bad weather or refusals, etc., that might occur during the programme. But I'm confident with the support of the developers, the installers that we have in partnership, that we'll be able to complete the programme timetable. The programme reporting is quite onerous, and I know many other councils are not actually taking part in this bid programme because of the complexities of the programme and the timescales involved. So as I said earlier, we are in a very fortunate position to be able to bid at the moment. But I think, I'm sure members will agree that the carbon savings, the job creation and the lifting people out of fuel poverty will support our residents. The external wall insulation programme alone will save 6,500 tonnes of CO2 over the lifetime of the scheme. So that's quite a substantial impact on carbon emissions. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to.
Thank you very much, Rob. I've got several speakers. Don't worry, I've got everyone who's indicated so far. Councillor Morley, please. Tony Morley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to report to colleagues that I've been able to spend time, sadly on the phone, not face to face, with the authors of the report, mainly with Rob, of course, but also with Tim Braun. And I am happy to move that we accept the report as written, but I'd also like to reserve the right to come back in on the debate later. Thank you, Chair.
Of course, Councillor Atkin.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to thank Rob and his team for this report to bring these non-traditional homes back in up to standard. So I'm quite happy to second the recommendation. I'll reserve the right to speak in the debate.
Okay, thank you very much. Martin Burford, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I strongly support this excellent report, programme bid and recommendation. We obviously don't want to see for years to come the fabric and poor insulation standards of these remnant properties to continue to deteriorate. It's not fair on the owners or their neighbours, so I hope members will support this tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Mike Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I too congratulate Rob, and I congratulate him particularly in preparing such a bid, given the 3-day time slot and turnaround needed. It really is a continuation, of course, of some previous work that we supported out at Hurst Farms. But I have a couple of questions, Rob, if I may. First of all, has there any sort of structural assessment been carried out to prioritise the work of the wider programme, as it were, given that this work is a feature in a number of houses across the district and not just in that select area of Matlock? So that's one. And then secondly, it is a bid, of course, and there is no guarantee that we will get this money. But I got my fingers crossed, and I've got every faith that you're putting forward something that I think will meet with success. But are there any elements of this programme and the wider programme that could go ahead if the major funding is not achieved?
Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we haven't done a specific structural assessment for the properties. Effectively, there's 68 in the district, and they all need the works. We've had, in approaching the owners of the properties, at least twice by letter, only a handful have refused. Some will, I mean, it does sound a bit too good to be true, doesn't it? If you had a letter from the council saying we'd like to spend some money on your house, some people have thought actually it's a scam, and I've had to reassure some residents. Others want to wait and see if at some point in the future there'll be a full reinstatement programme which I've referenced in the report, would cost about £60,000 a property. Some are privately rented and the landlords haven't yet come back to me. So we've kind of self-selected, if you like, the actual ones that have come forward. So I've met the majority of residents and spoken to them over the phone, and they're a cohort, if you like, that are very keen on the idea. And although I've had to reassure some about the nature of the project, they've come round. In terms of the if the bid was unsuccessful, the capital programme allocation we're asking for is £250,000. That would go some way to making a good dent in the scheme. We've also got in the disposals pot some further funding that we've mentioned, so we could go further. We might not be able to make the whole scheme work from our own funding, but I think I'd always envisaged that this would be at least 3 or 4 phases of work over time, because with refusals and the availability of funding, it will be quite difficult to do them in one go. But this government funding really does take us some way, and I understand from colleagues in other boroughs across the country that given the timescales, not everybody's going to bid, and I think in the government intention to make this programme work, I wouldn't put my mortgage on it, but I'm quite happy to think we'll be successful at this stage.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Councillor Bull next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I'd like to just echo the comments from the other fellow members that another good report, and what we've already seen at Hurst Farm is making a difference, and the knowledge that it will help in the reduction and the help for costing of keeping the heat within properties for all, when we've actually have put out this, that we would be trying to change our carbon footprint throughout. So I quite welcome this report and I shall be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a brilliant scheme, this again. Thank you, Rob, for all the work you put into this scheme. I think it's excellent. My question is, well, 2 questions really. The first question is, will this scheme go ahead with Nottingham Housing Association and Derwent Housing Association if it's successful? And my second question is, what is the total of Derbyshire Dales contribution, percentage-wise, in this grant, including phase 2?
Rob.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I did talk to our local housing associations, including NCHA and Peak District Rural, but in the case of NCHA, they only had 1 property that met the criteria in the district, because a lot of their stock's relatively new, so they've not had to do the insulation works.
Yeah,
the older homes have got.
Yeah, they are the older ones. Yeah.
Given the timetables, it's been difficult for the other associations to mobilise themselves. I should say, I know members may have mixed views about platform, but they have a massive infrastructure that allows them to make these kind of programs work, and the number of apprentices they'll be creating, the in-house services they provide, they're able to respond to this program very quickly, and they've actually in the background been doing masses of work across stock here and the rest of the country. So credit where credit's due, I think. In terms of the overall percentage, if it comes up, we'll be working at about 25% of our input is 25% of the programme.
Thank you, Rob.
Councillor Flitter, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've got no questions.
Oh, hold on a sec. Councillor Flitter, can you get nearer the mic?
I'm right on top of it.
Can everyone hear okay? Okay, we'll carry on.
Yeah, I've got no questions because I'm well versed in this subject. And that's thankful to Rob and his team for keeping ward members and local people up to date with the improvements that have been happening as they go on. And I have to say that I would like to see full support for this tonight, because it's not just about improving the housing, which obviously we've seen a lot of benefit. People are saving money because the houses are a lot warmer, but it's also affecting the well-being of not only the residents, but for the estate as a whole. And that's because they can see something happening, and residents are going around with a smile on their face because they're now comfortable where they live. They're getting older and they need this sort of support. It's been well received on Hurst Farm, and I'm glad that we can look at going to Ashbourne, Hogneston, Dale, and it was at the 11th hour when a lady from Tansley rang up and said, "You realise I'm the only house in Tansley that hasn't been done." And the Rob and his team responded to this, and within days, this lady was signed up for the scheme. So thank you very much. Let's see if we can spread this goodwill across the district, and I shall give it my full support.
Thank you. Councillor Buckler, please.
Yes, as everybody else, I think it's a fantastic report. It's a fantastic piece of work, and I'd like to commend Rob and his team for the strategic way it's been done. I know how difficult it is to do some of these grant applications in the timeframes that we're given at the moment, and it's really impressive that this has come through so quickly.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Chair, Rob, I'd like to thank you and your team for working so hard on this programme, and I wish you well with your funding application. I think we're all looking forward to the programme being extended throughout the Derbyshire Dales. I was fortunate to go down to Hurst Farm with Rob Coggins and Councillor Flitter to meet some of the residents there who've had this work done on their homes, and I can say they were absolutely delighted with it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, Chair. I too add my congratulations and support to the project. I, like Rob, I'm 99% sure it'll be successful. I've got a question about platform, really. Rob, do you know if there are many other properties owned by a platform which are currently in the EPCE and below category, which they've chosen not to put forward for inclusion in this particular scheme?
Yes, through you, Chair. There are about 450 properties that they have in that EPC band E and below. That reflects the age of construction and the stock profile of the district. They recognise that very clearly, and the work they've been doing behind the scenes for this bid and others has been very impressive. They are very keen to work with us through this programme to support the improvements of their stock, and I'm absolutely confident that given the future programmes that come along behind this scheme, because there will be others, the government have said so, and they're funded, I'm sure Platform will be working with us and with the Local Authority Energy Partnership to put more properties through the programme.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation and then a quick question, really. I've watched this evolve because I'm regularly up on the Hurst Farm estate, and I've chatted to people who've had their works done and they've been full of positivity, and they've been commenting on how beneficial it has been to the houses, not only aesthetically but for heat. My question is basically, it's quite a tight timescale from the 1st of September through to the 31st of March next year, and it's going over the winter period. Now, what is the impact if through a heavy winter or anything like that that prevents the work being undertaken? What happens then? Thank you.
Rob.
Yes, that's a good question, and it was on my mind when I was looking at the guidance. The council will have to sign up to a memorandum of understanding with the Secretary of State, and that details these kind of issues that may arise. I've had to produce a risk assessment that goes in with the application, and I've highlighted at this stage adverse weather. We may have no snow, we may have 2 months of snow, who knows, or a lot of rain, because you can't render these properties in wet weather. So So the memorandum of understanding provides an provision which allows the council and the Secretary of State to come to an agreement about extending the programme or some other arrangements with the funding that's left over. So so I don't feel like we're in too much of a tight corner, and we have some wriggle room if we need it at the end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Raw.
Hi, yes, just a quick one. Fully support it, as do all the councillors. Just wanted to check that we've contacted adult care, because if there's elderly clients that are in these properties, we'll probably have to make some arrangements for respite care, and giving them a bit of a warning might be helpful.
Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Well, all of the works are external, and we know from phase one the average age of our residents was 68, and there were no issues with people having to leave the property. To reassure members, they work in a fully COVID compliant manner. They've done their own risk assessments, the installers, so they're very aware of the issues that might arise. To put your minds at rest, the main issue was people's satellite dishes having to be moved temporarily while the scaffolding went up. That was the only reason I got a telephone call about the works, and the installer was very quickly back on site to reposition the satellite dish. So we're very confident that it won't be interrupting people's lives to any great extent through the works.
Just saying that though, Rob, some people's disabilities are hidden and not visual. People have got mental health problems, etc., and there's noise and stuff. It might be just useful to just, give a heads up in case there is anybody in the area once we know it's actually going ahead and the addresses.
Yeah. Just to say that the installer has worked. Their main work is with local authorities on these type of programs, and they're very well used to working with vulnerable residents on former council estates. So I take on board the comments from Councillor Raw, and I'll raise those with the installer. But I have every confidence in the installer in this case.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Wakeman.
Yeah, just to echo what everybody else has said, brilliant report, and thank you to Rob and his team.
Okay, and now I have to wind up Councillor Morley again, who proposed.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Chair. You'll be pleased I'm not going to do any echoing. It's just another issue, another dimension to this for members to keep in mind going forward. That we often say, and we're right, that we punch above our weight. And there's three elements to that. One is connecting with the residents, which is down to us. And I'm sure I'm not the only councillor who's been out and getting wet through this afternoon in the parish. Secondly, the effective management and systems. We've got a great management, great systems managed by the officers. And the third thing, we're a small authority, yeah, but ambitious plans. And that means we need partners who can keep us visible. And that's where Platform come in. 45,000 homes under management. They can keep us visible to our chums in Westminster, and again, supporting Rob when applying for grants, which he's very, very good at. So thank you very much for bearing with me, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the vote now, please. It's been proposed and seconded, and I'll hand over to Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Allison. Councillor Allison.
4.
Archer.
4.
Atkin.
4.
Wright.
4.
Buckler.
4.
Bull.
4.
Martin Burfoot.
4.
Sue Burfoot.
4.
Buttle.
4.
Donnelly.
4.
Elliott.
4.
Fitzherbert.
4.
Fitter.
4.
Froggatt.
4.
Finesse.
4.
Gamble.
4.
Hill.
4.
Hobson.
4.
Hughes.
4.
Lees.
4.
Tony Morley.
4.
Joel Morley.
4.
O'Brien.
4.
Hawley.
4.
Purdy.
4.
Ratcliffe.
4.
Raw.
4.
Rose. Councillor
For
Rose.
Jackie. It's for Jackie.
4. Thank you. Shirley.
4.
Slack.
4.
I don't think Councillor Statham's here, is he?
No,
No.
he's not here.
Sutton.
4.
Wayne.
4.
And Wakeman.
4.
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 11, the Ashbourne Recreation Grand Pavilion. This is going to be a sort of triumvirate, I think. But we'll start with Ash.
Thank you, Chair. Although I'm opening the report, it's very much been a team effort, with the majority of the work being undertaken by Mike Goldsworthy and Becky Bryan. This is a project which has been in the pipeline for some time, and it's something that most members will be familiar with. Although I'll leave the detail to other colleagues who are going to join in the debate, I'd like to add that despite reservations or concerns that have been raised in the past with this project, I believe that the partnership have taken this on board and have looked to address those concerns and done a great deal of work to get into this point. And to coin a phrase that was used earlier, credit's where credit is due. So I'll pass over to Mike and then to Becky, if I may, please, Chair.
Of course, Mike.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this is quite a complex report with a number of elements to it, and it's all about putting together some various pieces of a puzzle to secure funding for this scheme and to enable the group to deliver the scheme. But you can basically break the report down into 3 main areas and 3 main issues, which are financial, property issues, and then arrangements around the pitch improvements programme. So just to run through very briefly, the financial issues, as outlined in the report, there is the capital funding, which when this scheme was originally considered by members back in 2018, the recommendation then was to make available the money that's in our capital programme for improvements and maintenance of the park pavilions in Ashbourne, to make that money available to the group as match funding towards any other funding that they would be able to draw in towards the scheme. Back in 2018, that amount was 70,000. It's now 79,000, and that's what we're recommending is provided as match funding. There is then the second element, which is the Section 106 monies, which, as outlined in paragraph 3 of the report, half of those funds are with us now, the other half are due later this year, and we are recommending that amount, which is just over 71,500, is also made available as capital funding, as match funding for this scheme. There is an additional element to this, which is that the group have asked for the release of a certain amount of that funding, totaling £36,000, which is required now in order to pay professional fees in order to further develop the scheme between the situation they're at now, where they've got planning consent and they've got a specification, up to the point where they'll be able to start work on site should all the funding be in place. So that's the third element. The final element of the funding is this request for additional funding, which is included at appendix 3 of the report, and that element of funding is there, as it's stated in the letter, as almost an insurance policy for the group should the various elements of external funding either not be forthcoming or not be available on time, because they all have different time scales and different times by which they have to be spent. So that sort of summarises the financial position. Moving on to the property side of things, I mean, this scheme is really about providing a state-of-the-art pavilion on the Ashbourne Recreation Ground for use by the various sports clubs, and it's to be provided on the site of the current Ashbourne Memorial Pavilion, which would be demolished as part of this scheme. In order to secure some of the funding, some of the funding bodies, particularly the Football Foundation, which is one of the key funders, will require the group to have sufficient security of tenure to have an agreement, a longer term agreement to guarantee their use of the building and also of the pitches that go with it. And what we have therefore proposed is an agreement for lease, which then leads upon certain conditions being met. One of those conditions being all the funding must be in place. It then leads to a 50-year lease of the site of the new pavilion, which would then be operated by the group in the future. There's also a supplementary agreement, which is a maintenance license, a construction license, which allows the existing building to be demolished and the new building to be built. Now, because this is a 50-year lease, it classes as disposal in property terms, and also it encroaches on a small area of public open space, in that the new building is not quite on exactly the same footprint as the existing. So therefore it requires public open space advertising. That is out at the moment and it closes on the 25th of September, and I've referred to that in the report. And the final thing on the property side of things is that as with all disposals, we consult with the ward members and the local council, and Ashbourne Town Council have asked me to bring to the attention of the committee a number of questions that they've asked, which we will answer in writing following this meeting tonight. There's a couple of questions regarding the involvement of the rugby club and involvement of other sports clubs in this project, which we can answer. There was a specific question about a defibrillator which is attached to the building and how that will be dealt with should the building be replaced, and I'm sure the group would work with us on that. I don't think there's any particular issue there. The final question being how community events that in the past have taken place on the recreation grounds, such as the firework display, will be dealt with in the future. The answer to that being that they would be considered, as are all events on council land, by our events team, who would consult in the usual way. So that's the financial and the property side of this proposal. The third part of the puzzle is the pitch improvements programme, and I can now hand over to Becky Bryan, who can talk you through that element. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Chair. So to enable Ashbourne Sport and Community Partnership to receive Football Foundation funding, which is the main funder for the project, one of the conditions is to upgrade the football pitches to a good standard. At the moment, they are rated as a poor standard after having a pitch inspection by the Institute of Groundsmanship. So we're working with Derbyshire County FA and the local sports clubs to apply for funding for the upgrading of the football pitches to the good standard. So the football club locally is Ashbourne Aztecs, and they can apply for around just over £28,000 towards the pitch improvements, which is over a 6-year period. And the total cost of the project is just over £42,000 over the 6-year period to upgrade that pitch to a good standard. And so to enable the partnership to get the funding towards the pavilion, it's around improving that football pitch as well to a good standard. Thank you.
Ash and Mike, did you want to add anything there?
No, I think that's it. It's open for debate. Chair, thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Sue Ball, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, well, this report has been time of coming, as we can see. And we know we had the fact that planning applications went in and the likes. As Mike did stipulate on the issues, there's a lot of financial issues within it, which we have already agreed to. And the one reference that he made for Appendix 3 of the 175 as an insurance and a backstop might not come to fruition as not having. But if members come to feel that that might be too much, then I would like to put a proposal to amend part of recommendation 5 to state that if that money was needed, it is brought back to a future meeting of the council for that to be fully incorporated within the corporate plan, within the capital programme, I mean, sorry. But other than that, I think all the questions that everybody has had with it have been answered, and I'm quite happy to move the report as is, other than the issue of item 5, as I've stated.
Okay, James, does that find, is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's acceptable, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Donnelly?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to second that recommendation. I think that it's been on the go a long time now, but firstly, may I also thank the hard work that's gone into this over the last couple of years with the staff, and it's been some time and come to fruition, but at least now we're nearly there, I think. And I also believe that the sports people of Ashbourne and Ashbourne just have a better than situation we're in at the moment. And I hope that tonight that people will support it, because if they don't, what the problem could arise, that we will be left with a building that still needs updating, and I believe it would cost us a lot of money. So I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank
and
you.
hopefully it'll go through tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Archer?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add my wholehearted support to this, and a big thank you to Ash, particularly Mike, Becky, and also Paul. I know the community group who've been working with it have been really positive about the support they've had in recent months to bring this to where it is. It's been a really long journey, but things have moved very quickly in the last few months as a result of the work of the community group behind the scenes, and also the officers. So thank you very much on behalf of Ashbourne to the officers for their proactive approach in recent weeks and months on it. For members who aren't familiar with this site, who are considering whether to vote, how to vote on this, I use this site myself, my children use this site, and it absolutely, desperately is in need of replacement. It is an embarrassment to our district and to our town. And as somebody who visits sports facilities all around the district and the county, and this is by far and away the worst one I ever visit when I play sport myself or my children play sport. And visitors to the district often comment on the terrible state that it's in. It's massively widely used by hundreds and hundreds of children in all sorts of different clubs, as well as adult clubs. And we really desperately do need it. And as Councillor Donnelly mentioned, although the report identifies potential high financial risk in this scheme, if this community group don't get this through tonight, and that's going to put some of the funding that they're hoping to get at risk, and will leave us as a council, I think, with a big liability potentially with a building on our hands that is not fit for purpose and could be a significantly higher financial risk than we were facing through supporting it tonight. So I would really like to strongly support it on behalf of the rugby club, the football club, the cricket club, all the clubs who use the rec. It is desperately needed. Even after this goes through, if we get it, there still won't be really enough changing rooms, because the other changing room facility that rugby club use has recently been condemned as well, and we're going to need to put some investment into that. So even this wouldn't really be quite enough, but it's going to be a massive improvement. It's desperately needed, and I would urge people to vote in favour of it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to call on the fourth Ashbourne member, Councillor Lees.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo really what's already been said. Special thanks to Becky, Mike and Ashley and the team for all the hard work, and the Pavilion group that have battled hard and long to get this far with the project. And also with regards to the defibrillator, I presume that I'm involved in that project on the defibs around Ashbourne, and it'll either be sited temporary or we've got plenty of others around about the vicinity. And equally with the memorial, we've been speaking to the memorial part of it with the British Legion, and it's they're doing it right, and I fully support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I hope anything I say is not seen as pouring cold water onto these proposals, or anything I say being critical of the project itself and those who have brought it to this point. I'm merely making comment, as it were, because I think all things needed to be considered given the amount of monies that we are being asked to contribute towards this. Now, Councillor Archer has made some really excellent comments in defence of this, and I think too the sports group behind this need to be congratulated. Every credit is due to them. Their aspirations are commendable and the intentions are excellent, being in pursuance of health, fitness and well-being for the Ashbourne community and indeed beyond. But there are some possible downsides which have been, I think, brought out in the report. Incidentally, just as an aside, I think it would be good to see sport and recreation investment in other areas of Derbyshire Dales. I can think of things that could come forward within my own ward, very similar to this, on the recreation field that the football teams gather on. Now, there's a great deal of money, as I say, being involved in this and coming from various sources, and not all of it is confirmed by any means. Incidentally, I note the letter to you, Mr. Chairman, and I have to ask, you know, this letter that requests £175,000 to be put forward, you know, where does that sit in relation to the recommendations that we are going to vote in a moment? Is it going to be explored separately at another meeting? I didn't quite sort of pick up on.
I think I can ask Mike Galsworthy to answer that.
Okay, and then if I just finally, I also note the comment that I would assume Karen Henriksen has made on the financial aspects of this in the report, and the fact that she has quite clearly said that the risk of the recommendations is assessed as high. Now, one of the recommendations is that we give an upfront grant of £36,000 for work that has already been undertaken in pursuance of this. But if the bid itself fails, of course, that money is, I would have thought, not recoverable very clearly. So I think, again, this is something that we, you know, have to be aware of, because, you know, I make the point time after time after time that the monies that we devolve, no matter how beneficial they are, in the end, it's taxpayers' monies from across the whole district, not just from our individual wards and communities.
Okay, can I ask
anyway,
Mike?
There is a question there that
Yeah.
you say that Mike might like
can
to answer.
Mike.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So two questions there, really. If I may take them the other way around. The 36,000, which is for professional fees, is a request that came earlier than the request for the 175. This has been sort of throughout or earlier this year from the group, and this is basically, I think, as I've outlined in the report, the group have commissioned architects, quantity surveyors, engineers, project managers to make sure that this scheme is robustly costed. It's not, and everything is in place to allow the scheme to be delivered should the funding be available. And what they've asked for is that they need further professional advice and help, which will incur fees now, which is to bring the project from where it is now up to the point where it's ready for start on site and ready for letting a tender. So there's a lot of work to be done before anything actually happens. That's what the 36,000 is for, and that money is therefore at risk in that if the project for whatever reason didn't proceed, that money is at risk. The other amount, the larger amount, the 175, which is requested in the letter, it is high risk, and Karen can comment on that. I think she's put in the financial comment, financial risk, why she considers that to be a high risk. They are saying, the group, that they hope to get this money from elsewhere and they hope that that won't be needed. But obviously, once the commitment is given to provide that amount of money, the commitment is there and it could be called upon. So there's a bit of uncertainty around that because, you know, they are trying. The one thing I can absolutely say from what I've seen is the group are fully committed to this and are trying every avenue they can to secure funding and have gone about it in a very professional way, but it is still that element is at risk, and that's why they're asking for that money. The one thing I would say about that money, the 175, is that would be in the pot with the match funding, which wouldn't actually be paid across until everything else is in place, until the lease is in place. So that's a different category of risk to the 36,000, but it is still something for members to consider. Thank you.
Chair, if I may just ask Mike
quickly,
just a very quick supplementary. Do I take it then that first of all that 175 is not contained within the recommendations this evening, and if it is we are called upon to come along and offer this money to finalise, it will be considered separately at on another occasion?
Mike?
Yeah, well, the way the report is worded is for that to be considered. So it's really in members' gifts to decide how they want to deal with that element of the report. This request has come in fairly close to the date of the committee, and it is there in front of you. And I suppose the decision needs to be made whether to agree to that now, whether to defer that to a future meeting, or whether to or how to respond to it. I mean, the request is there. I suppose I don't think there's much more we can say on it other than that is the request, and the background to the project is outlined in the report and what we've all said this evening.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. I've got Councillor Flitter now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, what a wonderful project this is, and it'll be great benefit to the people of Ashbourne. I don't have any questions, but I just have a plea to make, and that is, can we please start and get on with this SAAP? Because the delays that I know, I don't like to say this, but the delays we've suffered in Matlock and Tansley through the long legal wrangles of leases, it's not just preparing them, it's getting them agreed as well. And sometimes I know we've been told that the lease will not go until the funding is in place, but on many occasions, the lease has to be in place for that funding to come through, because they don't actually have the rights until the lease is signed. So can we please get on with this? Let's see the benefit for Ashbourne and local surroundings and for its local people.
Thank you. Councillor Slack. Councillor Slack.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I was very concerned about it's quite a lot of the £75,000. I understand the £36,000 has to be paid out for architects and all the fees to go up to trying to get the lease, trying to get the grants, etc. But I'm more reassured now from Mike Galbraith that the £75,000 is recoverable if it doesn't take place. Is that correct, Mike? Will you reassure me on that one? Also, a question, being now that it's a 50-year lease, will the Ashbourne Sports and Leisure Partnership now be maintaining the grounds like the Worksworth Recreation Ground is maintained by the trustees? Will they be maintaining it same as they do at Wordsworth or not? So there's two questions there, Mike. Is that set in stone, the 75?
Mike's ready.
Yeah, if I may take the first part of that question, and I'll defer to Becky for the second part about the pitches. But with the question about is the £175,000 recoverable, well, it's match funding. So if it is provided, if it is agreed to tonight, that would be, the council would say that we will provide that as match funding to the scheme. None of that money would go anywhere until all the funding is in place.
Yeah.
The lease wouldn't start until the funding is in place. There'd be an agreement for lease. And one of the conditions from the agreement for lease to it becoming a lease is the funding must be in place. So obviously it's an allocation of funding and a promise to pay that funding, but it won't actually be paid until everything else is in place. So that covers the funding. I think Becky can probably answer better than me on the pitch element.
Becky, the pitches.
Second question, Mike.
Yeah, Becky's going to answer that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the maintenance of the pitches will remain the same, as in the District Council will continue to maintain the football pitches, and the partnership will just have a right to use the pitches. So we'll continue with the maintenance of those. But obviously with the £42,000 that we're asking for to upgrade the pitches to that good standard, that would work with the clubs to do for that funding, and would also get an external contractor to carry out those works. So we'd continue with the maintenance as we do now, but to upgrade them to the good standard, that would be through an external contractor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I always support projects which using our capital monies in such an imaginative way, particularly if they're in the western and north of the districts. I commend the principle of the project. Before I ask my question, can I just clarify what Sue Bull's proposal actually was? Was it to the effect that it omitted approval of recommendation 5?
Sue, did you want to answer that?
Yes, I said, obviously through the debate, if there was an issue with the 175, then I would state that this was brought back if they actually needed it, and we would discuss it at another meeting to be put onto the capital programme.
Well, I suggest that at the end that James has the appropriate wording.
Yeah.
Between us all sorted. Okay, so Councillor O'Brien, did you have something else?
Yeah, well, so my question was, when I look at this is, if it were 175, this would take our total investment to something like £320,000, which is a large sum. So I do think colleagues are right that we need to exercise due diligence on this. And I'm looking at paragraph 3 of the partnership's chair's letter to us, and that actually identifies a funding gap at the moment of 55,000, 775 up to 830. They're asking for 175, so presumably the difference between 175 and the 55 is sort of a hedging their bets that some of the current funding bids are not successful. So it might be more prudent to approve at this stage the 55,000 rather than the full 175,000, and then look at any further funding at a future stage. I just leave that on the table. That to me would seem a more prudent way.
Thank you. We'll come back for clarification of that amendment to the 5. Yeah.
Can I finish my question then? It is that obviously the new business plan has been provided to Becky Bryan, but we have no recommendation or opinion from our officers, other than from Karen, which says it's a high risk. It would be unusual for us to approve £175,000 grant without any view from our officers at all. So I would like to ask our senior officers what is their opinion before we make a decision on recommendation. What actually is their opinion on this? Are they recommending to it us or not?
So I think we go to probably is that Ash or Mike? Would you say?
I'll add my view, Chair, if I may. For Councillor O'Brien's benefit, this is it's been a series of reports. So business plans and proposals have been put in front of members previously, and we collectively have gone back to the partnership outlining concerns, which is what I was referencing in my opening statement, really, because we have sought to have greater assurances on their business plan, and especially around the funding and the support of funding from other partners. So in terms of where we stand as officers, we're supporting the project. The Appendix 3, as you will have seen, came in quite recently, this request. But it's a decision for members, really, to whether they support this or not. But as an overall project, yes, officers do support the project, and we feel that the partnership have played their role.
Right, okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Pawley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got two questions, actually. The first is the simple one. In the recommendation 4, we're being asked to recommend £36,000 for these lawyers' fees, but in paragraph 210 they're saying they've only asked us for £34,980. Now I know that's just over £1,000 difference, but it is a difference. I'm just wondering why they're asking us, well, we are being asked to recommend 36. That's the first question. The second question is on the £175,000, and what they're saying is that if they can get funding externally, we won't have to actually donate that amount towards the project. I'm wondering if you say they're very professional, the group that are doing this. I wonder if we've got any input in that. Are we helping them with doing the applications for external funding, even though we're obviously not allowed to sign any of the documents or anything like that? But are we actually, have we got a finger in the pie, in other words, that might help us not get to the point where we've got to give the £175,000 over? That's my question. Two questions.
Okay, is that Mike or Ash? Mike.
Sorry, I could answer the bit about the professional fees. I think that's due to a contingency being in the amount. So apologise for that discrepancy in the report. There's a certain amount of actual fees, and then they've added a contingency on, which is normal in such circumstances. So that is the top amount that would be required. So I suppose what we're asking for is that that amount be made available. Obviously, if the fees are less than that, it will be less. But that was the amount, including a contingency. And the second question about the funding, we have provided them with information that assists the group in applying for funding. In my case, that's been property information and obviously other information from Becky and her team. So we are providing them with that information to assist them in these applications. And from what we've seen, they are going about it in a very thorough and professional way. That's all I can say from my perspective, and echoing what Ash has said, really, that we are supportive of the project, but it is the amount of money that members need to weigh up compared to other priorities that the council may have.
Okay, thank you. I've lost my list here. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to return to Appendix 3 as well. And I was going to ask the same question as Councillor O'Brien about the status of the motion. So I'll wait for that to happen.
Right, okay, very good.
Properly.
We'll
But my
come back.
follow-up was, again, concerning the £175,000, excuse me. And my question is, if we do not agree £55,000 or £175,000 tonight, does that have an impact on other funding organisations and the ability of them to raise funds for the project? And secondly, over what timescales do we have to make a decision if there is a shortfall over whether we will commit to filling that shortfall? So, for example, if the shortfall is £55,000, and will we have to make a decision in September, October, December? When would we need to be able to make a decision for the project to go ahead? Thank you, Chair.
Ash, Ash and Mike.
I'm actually going to pass it over to Becky. Becky's dealt with
it. Okay. Becky, sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the timescales of the project and the funding, I mean, that will entirely depend upon the other funders. So what you find with a lot of the funding applications that are going in, they do require match funding. So again, this is where the £175,000 may be needed, because a lot of the funders do require match funding to show that there's a lot of support for the project already. And the timescales, again, are dependent upon what the funders do ask for. I know with the English Cricket Board, they are needing an answer by the end of this year. So again, this is going to entirely depend upon all the funding applications that go in. So we are working closely with the group to ensure that the funding applications go in and they are successful. So obviously we'll know more once the applications are received. Thank you.
Ashley, can I get to Ash, please?
Just to support what Becky was saying, Chair, if I may, for members who are not as familiar with grant applications, often groups will require one, mainly the larger sum, to trigger the award of other applications. So when Becky's referring to match funding, should members approve it tonight, that's when other people contributing to this project will start to release their funds. So it does need somebody to start the process, and that's essentially what we're asking for this evening.
So, Chair, can I just come back in with
very quickly
with the first question, which does this put the funding, if we don't agree to that match funding tonight, does that put the project at risk?
I'll take this one, Chair. Thank you.
Please.
Again, it could potentially put it at risk, but like I say, we are working with the group and with other funders to try and get as much funding in as possible. But as Ash says as well, we are reliant upon that first release of funding, which then will eventually release other funding from providers such as the Football Foundation and Sport England. So it would put it at a risk, but until we start applying for these funds, it's unclear as to how much of a risk that would be.
Okay, Councillor Michelle Morley.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened very carefully to colleagues this evening, and I think we need to bear in mind that since March this year, we've all lived in times that we didn't believe would actually happen. And I think to actually put any brakes at all on a project such as this, where so many people will benefit in all sorts of settings, I feel would be tragic. And I do think we need to have, personally, we need to have the faith in the officers and their due diligence, and just trust that they are going to spend these monies carefully. Yes, there's always risk, but I think the benefits are way stronger than any risk with this particular project, and I'll be wholeheartedly supporting the project. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. Having played both football and cricket on the rec at Ashbourne, a recent visit over to Ashbourne and saw the pavilion and also the bandstand, it was very concerning about the quality of it. I am wholeheartedly supportive of the actual proposals, but looking at the report, I was a little bit shocked because this is an opportunity to put forward and improve the health and well-being of residents of Ashbourne and also improve community cohesion. But we're only putting through 70-odd thousand pounds of Section 106 money. I'd like to know if there is enough. I have sent a number of questions in before anybody wants to mention about asking questions before, but basically, is there any opportunity of going to that fund to enhance? That's the first question. The second question, in relation to Councillor Ratcliffe's point about other locations in the district, one of my roles is the groundsman up on Cavendish, and we've availed ourselves of the Football Foundation, and they've come along and we've taken out a contractor, and it's vastly improved the pitch quality. One of my concerns in the report was they were questioning the equipment of the council, because the council are going to continue to maintain. I would ask them to exercise some caution and not go and buy any more equipment until they've seen what all the interventions by the contractors can do. And I'd like a reassurance that they wouldn't do that. Thank you very much.
Is that for Becky or Becky?
I can take the final question, Chair, around the equipment and the maintenance. So yeah, we are working with the Football Foundation, and hopefully with getting the pitch up to that good standard, we'll be applying for funding through the Football Foundation as well for this. But part of this funding is getting an external contractor to carry out the enhanced maintenance work. So we would continue with the basic maintenance of the pitches, but the enhanced maintenance will be done by an external contractor, so we wouldn't be required to purchase any new machinery or equipment. Thank you.
Chair, could I just ask if anybody could take away and look at the Section 106 possibility, please?
Right, I think was Mike going to answer that?
Well, just to say, Chair, that the Section 106 money that's recommended in the report is money that's actually allocated towards the improvement of Ashbourne Recreation Ground, which is what this scheme is all about, and hence that's why that money is included in this report. Obviously, there's other 106 monies that the authority collects, but that's a matter for others as to how that's allocated. This has specifically been asked for by this group because they've quite rightly picked up that it's been allocated for improvements to Ashbourne Recreation Ground.
Okay, Councillor Purdy, please.
Thank you, Chair. When I became leader, I was approached by the my three ward members, no disrespect to the other fourth member, Matt, but I was given a lot of earache about the Ashbourne assets. And so I went over and specifically looked at them, as some other colleagues have mentioned tonight, in a very, very, very poor state. Those members that have been longer than the council than some of you will know that at one time, going back about 2 chief execs, we didn't have a maintenance programme. And unfortunately, we're paying the cost of that now, and the legacy sits with us. And I had a bit of an argument at a Leaders Advisory Group last year that I wanted Ashbourne being focused upon with regard to the conditions of those assets there. And as Matt has said tonight and Councillor Wayne has said, they are really in a very poor state. I want to echo what Councillor Fritter says. We need to get this moving, and we seem to have got bogged down this evening in semantics, what and ifs. I think the recommendation from Councillor Bull is sound in that if they need the 175, and it's not an ask of those monies at the moment, it's an if they need those monies, then they should report back to this council, and it should be subject to another report to council for consideration. But I think we should show quite strongly to this group, and I want to thank this group for sticking with us, because I've been very closely associated with this for a long time and closely questioned our officers on this. about the integrity of this group. Can we trust them? Those kind of questions, which I think probably some of you have got in your own mind. And the answer's always been yes. And I was worried some time ago when they came up with what was considered to be a much grandioser scheme than this one, and was unreachable, and we had to advise them to go back to square one. So I know that our officers have put an awful amount of work into this, and I think that we've got to now back the officers. I think recommendation 5 is right to say, bring it back, notify us if you've got a problem. But as far as the other recommendations are concerned, I hope that we can all support them, support the people of Ashbourne, the wider benefits as has been mentioned, and give a nod to this scheme, which needs to be kicked off. Excuse the pun.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Councillor Wakeman next.
Yes, Chair. I think this is well overdue, and I'm going to be supporting this tonight. And I'd like to thank everybody for all the good work they've put into it.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for allowing me to comment. I've just been having a look at the last paragraph of the letter that you received, and have listened very carefully to everything that's been said about this £175,000, because it obviously is something perhaps if we were thinking about it, we wouldn't be spending at this particular moment. But when this gentleman says to you that this whole scheme is going to cost £830,000, and even if the £175,000 isn't recoverable, we are going to get this provision for £254,000 that will be a real asset to the whole district. I think even if we push through to say that we would have this evening to agree on the £175,000, I would go with it because I think it's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bright.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just really to say, I think we've got a good history of these sorts of projects. I remember when I first became a councillor, we transitioned with the Works with Learnerpool, and as I understand it, that became a really good success, and it won awards with, I believe, Sports England. Ash might be able to help me here. I remember going and seeing them getting an award. So I think we've got a good history of this. I think our officers are well placed to do this, and also this has been going on for a long time. It is difficult for newer councillors to know the amount of work that's gone into this because it has been going on for some time. So I'll be supporting this. So yeah, I'll be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we're going back now to Sue Bull, who moved the report tonight. And I've been scribbling down some words. I don't know if you have, Sue, to add to amendment to number 5 of the 6 recommendations. That let me read what I've put out. That the request for additional capital funding received recently received from the ASCP included as Appendix 3 of this report is considered, and should additional funding be approved, appropriate provision is made in the capital programme once a further report has been brought back to council and approved as such. James, is that?
Yes, I think that covers it, Chairman.
Are you happy with that, Sue?
Yeah, it's just to the clarification that we want to get this moving, and obviously if they do actually need this money, then yeah, it comes back.
Councillor Finesse, I have, Sue Bull was just wrapping that up. Have you got something different to say?
Just on mute. It's just a question that occurs to me. I mean, I agree with Councillor Bull's amendment, you know, that we hang on to the 175,000 until we're sure it's needed. And just a question, I mean, if we approve the 175,000 tonight, might it not be that the other
that's not on the table now, so
okay,
so I don't think it's really relevant. Okay,
no, okay, no,
I'd like to go to the vote now with 5 including that, and a further report be brought back to council as to the approval of the 175 as such. Okay, Jackie, are you there?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Allison.
4.
Archer.
4.
Atkin.
4.
Bright.
4.
Buckler.
4.
Bull.
4.
Martin Barefoot.
4.
Sue Barefoot.
4.
Buttle.
4.
Donnelly.
4.
Elliott.
4.
Fitzherbert,
4,
Litter,
4,
Froggatt,
4,
Vaness,
4,
Gamble,
4,
Hill,
4,
Hobson,
4,
Hughes,
4,
Lees,
4,
Tony Morley,
4,
Michelle Morley,
4,
O'Brien,
4,
Corley,
4,
Purdy,
4,
Ratcliffe,
4,
Raw,
okay, move on.
Rose, Shirley,
4,
Slack,
4,
Sutton,
4,
Wayne,
4,
Wakeman.
4,
Was Councillor Rose there?
voted 4, Jackie.
Oh, thank you. I can't see him. And Councillor Raw.
Councillor Orr has notified she's left the meeting, Jackie.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much, everyone. I suggest we take a pause now and come back at 19:33. So that gives us 7 minutes. 19:33. Thank you. I think it's appropriate time to pause. 19:33.
Do you want to wait?
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, members. We'll restart. Super, thank you very much. I think everybody's more or less there. And that's Andrew Shirley coming back. There we go. Okay, lovely. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Item 12, the provision of revenue and capital outturn. Can I call on Karen, please?
Thank you, Chair. If members would just bear with me a moment, I'd like to take you through the key points of this report. The first main part of the report starts in section 2.2, and that deals with the revenue outturn position from 2019-20. We ended 2019-20 with a revenue account balance of £490,533. And we're recommending that will be transferred to the Funding Uncertainties Reserve. The table at 2.3 of the report explains the main reasons for those variances for members' information. And the reason that I'm recommending that we transfer the balance to the Funding Uncertainties Reserve is so that we can use that money during 2021 to help deal with the financial situation there, and I'll come on to that later in the report. So section 2 of the report also gives members an update on the balances at the year end on reserves and provisions. And it also, there's a section in 2.6 where it sets out the position on council tax and business rates collections. Both of those came in above target for the year, so that was good news. Moving on to the next section of the report, section 3, that deals with the capital programme. So capital spending for 2019-20 was around £500,000 less than the revised capital programme that was last approved. And the main reasons for that are set out in the table in the report. Capital spending in 2020-21 has been adjusted to take account of the slippage, the monies that weren't spent in 2019-20, but where those projects are now moving into 2021. 2020-21 programme also includes some new bids, and those are set out in the report. The total just under £1.4 million, and then they're all identified individually. That does, however, include the £175,000 for the Ashbourne Pavilion project that members have just decided to defer. So I'll speak later about how we need to reflect that in this report's recommendations. Section 3.4 of the report shows the proposed capital spending for 2021-22. And that's another £3 million. And details of all these items of expenditure are given in Appendix 3, where the individual schemes are shown. Section 3.5 deals with capital resources. The programme, as the tables show, is fully funded, the proposed programme. However, as it says in paragraph 3.7, this programme, after funding this programme and after taking account of the potential future liabilities that are set out in Appendix 4 to this report, there's only around £500,000 left to meet further liabilities. There are some liabilities in Appendix 4 that haven't been costed, like the traveller site. So you can see that our financial resources are becoming severely depleted. That will now that members haven't approved the Pavilion project, that 500,000 will now go up to around £680,000. Well, that's still not a lot for all our future needs. Turning now to the revised revenue budget, that's covered in section 4. I'm sure members are aware of the impact of the coronavirus and the serious impact it's had on the council's finances. At this stage, it's very difficult to tell quite how long it will take our income to recover. But I am forecasting that there could be losses in service income of around £2 million, with the vast majority of that relating to car parks. We're also forecasting additional service expenditure of around £750,000, and about £500,000 of that is made up of the support to the leisure contractor. In addition to that, there are some other cost pressures that are set out in the report. And it's also at this moment in time, the level of government funding that we might get is still very uncertain. So I do stress that a lot of the forecasts, are very uncertain and are likely to change as the year goes on. But taking all that into account, as it says in paragraph 4.6, we're predicting an overall impact of an additional net spend of £744,000 for 2020-21. And the way I suggest that we deal with that is to first of all fund it from the £490,000 that I'm asking members to put into the funding uncertainties reserve from 2019-20, and then fund the other £250,000 or so from the general reserve. In paragraph 4.7, I point out that the future's uncertain. It might be that we need more than that. Hopefully we'll need less. Hopefully the government will come through with some of the extra funding that we're bidding for, particularly for the lost income and for help with dealing with the leisure contractor. The next section of the report, section 5, deals with the medium-term financial plan. So this is where we set out our anticipated spending and income over the next 5 years. Again, this can't be conclusive. Changes will happen over the coming years. And one of the significant changes that we're waiting for is the outcome of 2 government reviews, one on fair funding and one on business rates, that will have an impact on our finances. And it's very difficult at this time to know what the outcome will be. So we need to proceed with caution when doing any medium-term forecasts. However, I have taken a very cautious approach to the medium-term plan. I've actually built in an assumption that our government funding will reduce by around £400,000 a year from next year. And I'm hoping that doesn't come to fruition. But if it does, we've taken a cautious approach. That has led to a savings requirement of £500,000 from 21-22. We won't know until later this financial year what the outcome of the government reviews is, but we should have sufficient in the general reserve if necessary. If it's a poor outcome, we should have enough in the general reserve to buy some time while we come up with a savings plan for future years. So I'm not at this moment advocating that members start looking for service savings or that you ask officers to do so, because it might be that I've been overcautious and we might find that those savings are not necessary. Finally, in section 7, we set out some key events for 2021 and beyond. I've already mentioned the fair funding review and the business rates review, but other significant matters that I'd like to bring to members' attention are the garden waste service. We need to realise, I think it was about £700,000 a year we're anticipating receiving for that to help fund the costs of the new waste contract, which were over £1 million a year more. The council house building programme that members recently approved, that should actually help generate us an income stream to help balance our budget. So that's a positive one. And finally, the climate change action plan, which is likely to cost a significant amount of money, £2 to £3 million over the period until we achieve the net carbon zero position. So I'm asking members to approve the report recommendations, but we will need to adjust them slightly to reflect the previous report and the removal of the £175,000. So that will mean that recommendation 5 will need to be amended so that the figure in recommendation 5 for new bids that's currently £1,368,573, that will need to be reduced to £1,193,573. And the total capital programme for 2020-21 will need to be reduced from 9,114,092 to 8,939,092. There'll be consequential amendments for section 3 of the report and appendices 2 and 3, but I'm not proposing we go through those. I think it's the recommendations that are important.
I think that's clear. Thank you very much. So, Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm happy to move the recommendations with the amendments that Karen has just identified. I'll allude back to my leader's announcement tonight, Chair, on the 3 major themes that affect us before Christmas. And this is really central to this provisional revenue and capital outturn budget. And so Karen is extremely wise to be prudent. I don't think you'll like this analogy, Karen, but I like to think that you're our anchor and that you anchor us in turbulent times, very turbulent times and stormy seas. We don't know what's around the corner. You said it could affect over the next few years. I would suggest we're going to have some effect over the next few weeks. I concern myself with what's being proposed in the sweeping planning reform white paper on section 106, for example. I concern myself with what's going to happen in the white paper on the devolution bill. So there's some really heavy targets in front of us, and therefore I say again that it's right to be prudent. I also thank you for a very, very easy to read report. When I first came into council, one of the most daunting aspects was reading budget reports and trying to get my head around figures. And whilst I'm company secretary to my son's independent financial advice business, my wife beats me into cats and fits on figures. So I do commend it to members, and I do thank again Karen's hard work and her team on this. But finally, we'll say again what was said tonight. The capital programme here, and the public will see that there are other areas that we're investing in the Derbyshire Dales, is again a reflection of the fact that this council does punch above its weight. So for a small authority, it's a well recommended capital programme, and thanks once again for your work, Karen.
Councillor Hobson.
Chair, I'm happy to second the recommendations, echoing what Councillor Purdy said, thanking Karen and the team for all their hard work and prudence. The future is uncertain. We do have to proceed with caution, but we do have to invest in our future and the future of the residents and the businesses of the Derbyshire Dales. It's a hard task you've got, Karen, with so much uncertainty, but I support your recommendations and thank you for answering so many questions from members prior to the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to echo the remarks already made about the excellence of the report and also the prudence of the recommendations. Turning to the revised revenue budget 2021 in section 4, and particularly section 4.1, where we talk about where the report talks about revenue, the revenue from particular services, and I note that there's a drop in a loss in car park income of 1.175 million. I understand that most of that is to do with COVID-19 and the reduced load on car parking spaces earlier on this year. But there is another factor which I've drawn attention of officers to in the past, which is that the online service at the machines doesn't work reliably. And I wonder if officers have an understanding of how much revenue is lost from that particular problem. And I understand that there is an effort is being made to resolve it in terms of improving the signal strength at individual meters, but it's still a problem. There are still payments not being made because the signal strength at particular car parking payment meters is not sufficient for a payment to be made. So this is significant given the need for additional revenue over the course of the next year to compensate for the lost revenue that we have already. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who have I got next? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to echo Gary Purdy's comments. I found this a very easy to navigate report. I would comment, it is difficult though for members to, in the 2 or 3 minutes allowed, it is quite difficult to get over all the points and questions we would like to in that period. And it might be helpful to have an opportunity in another forum to discuss complex reports like this. But my question relates to paragraph 3.7 and the point Karen made about when we get to the point in the not too distant future where there's only £500,000 left in the chest. Would it be prudent, for example, at the session that I believe you're going to organise in the new year on finance, for us to collectively look at other ways of financing our capital programme other than directly through our capital reserve, obviously through example, through borrowing rather than direct funding, before we actually get to the point of only having £500,000, so we aren't forced into something, because there may be some projects in this programme which could well be financed through borrowing rather than direct spend like this, and it might be useful to have a sort of discussion on that with your advice before we get to that point.
Karen.
Yes, certainly I can cover that in the workshop, but just to give you a quick response, borrowing isn't free, it has to be repaid, and it's the impact on the revenue account, on the annual repayments that will give us the problem. And that's why we've tended not to use it in the future, in the past, because we haven't got that capacity from the revenue account to fund the repayments. If we get a better settlement for future years, we might have some capacity. That's one of the reasons why I'm proposing a workshop January, February, because we might have more understanding then of our longer term future and what tools we will have.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sue Burford.
Thank you, Chair. Well, can I also thank Karen and her team for this excellent report. I think we have and we need to have, don't we, confidence in our Director of Resources, and I certainly think we all have that. Don't think there's anything wrong in being cautious. But looking at specific things on Appendix 4, the potential future liabilities, it just seems a little bit worrying that we've got 4 major items of to be decided. And I just wonder if Karen had got any comment on that. But also, to be very specific, we've got a to be decided on the station house in Matlock. Now, that needs significant repairs. Are we to be decided on what we're going to spend to do these repairs, or are we going to make a decision at some point in the future to actually put this property on the market? It has been vacant for an awful long time and it is deteriorating badly.
Karen.
I think these items are marked TBD because at the moment they're in their early stages of being developed. So we wanted to put them in the report so that they were flagged to members, so that we noted that they were coming in the future. But at the moment, we haven't brought a report to members, for example, on Station House, to identify what's required and ask members to specifically look at that. There is a report coming soon on the traveller site, and once members have identified a site, we can then work up the costings for that site and build them into the capital programme in future.
If I may come back, Chair, just specifically about the station house, I'm still not quite certain what, it's probably not really a question for Karen, but I don't know who else could answer it. So I'm still not very clear whether we're proposing to go out to tenders for these significant repairs, or, you know, what the future of this particular station house is. I'm still not very clear. Is that going to be something that we're going to decide relatively soon?
Chair, I might be able to help.
Rob, thank you. I was looking for someone to help. If you could, and yes, please.
So the station house property, you're correct, it's been empty for about 11 months since the previous occupier moved. We've been looking at the property in terms of it bringing it back into use as accommodation. Mike Gawesworthy's estate meeting about the council's estate generally, we're taking it there to discuss the potential options for the building, either as a residential opportunity or as or some commercial venture. So between housing and estates, we're working on that, and we'll bring that back to members in due course.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, lovely. I've got Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Karen, for this really good report, and it's very, very straightforward. And your expertise on financial matters are very, very good indeed. I would like to say that it's a very, very difficult time, as we all know, with the coronavirus. It's a time we've never seen before this last year, and what's in front of us, as Councillor Birdie said, we don't know what's around the corner, and it's going to be I believe, a very difficult time. And to have Karen and her financial team taking us forward, I have confidence, very much confidence in Karen's team, and I've given my full support, and I will be voting for all the recommendations she's made. So I would say to everyone else, we've got to support our financial staff in this crisis time and give them the maximum support. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pauline.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to go have a word about capital spending and the new bids. Could you tell me how the things that go in the new schemes are chosen? Because we've just talked about donating £149,000 to the Pavilion in Ashbourne, and here we are with another £70,000 going to the bandstand and the new shelter. There are plenty of other deteriorating buildings in the district that could do with a little bit of work on them, and I don't see them mentioned here, apart from, of course, the war memorials, which I wouldn't question about. But why are we spending more money on Ashbourne when other parts of the district are deteriorating as well? Why is that being given a priority? That's my first question. And the second one is, we've heard about the fair funding review and the retained business rate review for what seems an age now. And you've mentioned that you expect, Karen, you've mentioned that you expect that to come forward later in the year. How confident are you that that's going to happen?
Karen.
To answer your first question, the capital bids usually come forward through service directors, but in turn, they to develop those, they look at the corporate plan. So I'm fairly sure that the works for Ashbourne Rec and the bandstand and so on were included in the corporate plan that members approved in March. So that's why they're there. To answer your second question, probably I would say it's 50-50 whether the government will come back in autumn. They seem to be fairly confident that they will, but they've said that for the last 2 years. So I won't be putting any money on it.
crystal ball stuff. Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I thought you'd forgotten me.
I could never forget you.
That's right. I mean, Councillor Purdy was spot on in praising the management of this council and its continuing success, despite the very bleak ethos atmosphere that we're operating on. I have to say, there are so many high risks in this report, though, that it's difficult to be optimistic. And one notes particularly that we seem to be stuck at this moment in time with a Ministry of Communities and Local Government who are hell-bent on continuing in reducing their funded streams to us. And I ask rhetorically how long we can carry on with this present state of our finances before our services are going to be affected. I would suggest that, you know, they are just round the corner. But I thank Karen, as I'm sure everybody else does. And without her, you know, people like her looking after this council's finance, things could be even more uncertain. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you to Karen again for a very detailed and complete report here. Most of it is fact. And so I want to just look at Appendix 4 and 5 for a minute. And I have to say on Appendix 4, looking at the liabilities for the future, I have to agree with Councillor Burfoot that one thing in Matlock that is really concerning us is the state and the position, the situation with the station house at Matlock. I would hate for that to fall into total disrepair, where we get another scenario like Spa Villas, a row of Victorian 3-storey buildings actually demolished to make way for a car park. This is an important feature of Matlock, and I'd like to ask Rob, when he can come in, that we are included in any discussions. We are informed of the situations as they happen, and we are included in discussions as to the future of that building. And I would also suggest the Town Council would also take a part in deciding the future of that building.
Okay,
the question I have for Karen is that we look at the medium financial plan, and we know the savings that we have to make every year. And what worries me is that have the government actually made any concessions through COVID that we don't have to make savings every year? Because I'm concerned that time we get to 2025, we may end up with a huge bill that we can't afford, and services have actually got to be taken away from the council's responsibilities. So, I mean, have we looked into that? Have we any reassurance of that we are going to be sound in another few years?
I'll ask Karen first, and then Rob specifically on the station house. Karen.
Unfortunately, no, we haven't got any certainty. We haven't got any certainty over what they're going to give us this year for COVID. And until we know the outcome of the 2 reviews that I mentioned that's due later in the year, we don't have any certainty for future years either.
Okay, thank you. Rob?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I certainly take on board the points that have been made by members. I can assure you that it is, central in my mind, and also that of the Estates with Mike Galsworthy. We referred earlier to, or Karen did, to our council housing programme, and that could be an area where we look to take this property forward, because as becoming a landlord, again, for the first time, it would seem a bit odd to then dispose of our first and only property. So that is obviously in our minds, and working with one of our housing association colleagues, they have done some free work for us, looking at the potential for the improvement of the property and how we would do it and how it would be financed. So please be assured it is on our list of things to do, and I'm sure when we come back in November with the implementation plan for the council housing programme, it will feature in there.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd just like Councillor Purdy to wrap up the debate, please.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Rob, just a point on the Station House. I wonder if it'd be worthwhile talking to Alistair Morley to see if there are any funds through the Network Rail or anywhere like that. What I want to say, Chair, is two things. One, all leaders on DCN, and I know leaders on the county network, and indeed on meetings on MHCLG, we're pushing the government ministers really strongly about the need for funding. You might recall at the Freedom Leisure meeting, the Director of Freedom Leisure that was present, sorry, I can't remember his name, he said that there was circa £800 million that had been sort of bandied around, and there was some talk that it was even at the Treasury door. But we've heard nothing more concrete than that. So all I can assure you as leaders, we are pushing strongly government, and been listening to Genric on this planning reform this afternoon. As far as we're concerned domestically, in talks with Paul this last week, it's evident that we members have got to decide what are our priorities. And so out of this meeting tonight, you will see there are plans agreed in the corporate plan for work to be done. There are other wishes and asked for. And I repeat that unfortunately, we at our time in our council service have picked up a legacy from long years ago when there was not a maintenance budget or even a record kept on. So we've picked up some work that's required to be done. So we will bring it to members that we need to prioritise what needs to be done. In talks about the climate change, I'm blessed with a strong contact from Professor Stephen Martin. He's been talking to me this last few weeks, and I'm delighted to say that once the Clear Lead report is discussed at Council in October, I will be engaging with him, who has ideas, very strong ideas, and is referenced Warrington Council that's already won some monies, that there are monies available to such as authorities as ours for help with climate change. So thanks for letting me come in, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Can we go to the vote, please, Jackie?
Councillor Allison?
For.
Archer?
For.
Atkin?
For.
Bright?
For.
Buckler?
For.
Bull?
For.
Martin Barefoot?
For.
Sue Barefoot?
For.
Buttle?
For.
Donnelly?
For.
Elliott?
For.
Fitzherbert?
For.
Litter?
For.
Roggett?
For.
Vaness?
For.
Gamble?
For.
Hill?
For.
Hobson?
For.
Hughes?
For.
Lees?
For.
Tony Morley?
For.
Michelle Morley?
For.
O'Brien?
For.
Hawley?
For.
Purdy?
For.
Ratcliffe?
For.
Rose? Rose?
We need help from Paul.
That's for, Jackie.
So, Shirley?
For.
Slack?
For.
Sutton?
For.
Wayne? For. And Wakeman?
For.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Just moving on to item 13, COVID-19 Council Tax Hardship Fund. Karen, please again.
Oh, it's a little bit more positive than the last one. This is about some funding that the government has given to us. That should help our council taxpayers that are affected financially by COVID-19 or facing undue hardship. So the government has allocated us £338,264 to help ease council tax hardship. And this report seeking members' approval on how we should spend those funds. The only proviso that the government has set is that we should use parts of the money to fund a reduction in the council tax bill for those payers who are on our local council tax support scheme, and we should reduce their bill by at least £150, or if their bill is less than £150, by the balance. After quite a long time, we managed to get our software supplier to provide the software, and we then started to model what that would actually look like. And we found that awarding £150 to each person on council tax support would only use about half the money. So we modelled some other options. We also looked at the caseload. Table 1 in paragraph 2.7 shows that caseload has been increasing. In March, before the coronavirus began, we had 1,704 people of working age that were claiming council tax support. And by the 1st of August, that had gone up to 1,824. I asked yesterday, and I think it's now 1,834 cases. So that's around 80 cases more since the lockdown began. And we expect that it might rise more. We've now started to send out reminders about council tax bills. We're starting debt recovery with a light touch. But one of the things that's happening is that people are contacting us, telling us of their situation, and the revenues team are then saying to the people that they might be eligible for council tax support. So as more people get the reminders and get in touch, we expect the caseload to go up. So we have built an increase in the caseload into the modelling. Table 2 of paragraph 2.7 shows the modelling we did for different levels. But one of the things we need to be careful of is that we don't give too much money automatically to these people on council tax support, because that could result in an increase in caseload. In an increase in spending and an overspend. The way the government scheme is structured is that anybody who receives council tax support during this financial year will receive this payment. So if somebody just goes on to council tax support for a week and then gets another job and goes off it, they'll be entitled to the full amount. So we need to take care not to overcommit. So we've also looked at some other areas where we might want to specifically target funding for people that aren't on council tax support, not eligible for council tax support, but where they might need assistance. For example, at the moment, if a council tax property, a home, is undergoing major renovations, then we can give an exemption for up to 12 months so that the person doesn't pay council tax while that property is not habitable because of the renovations. Because of COVID-19, we have some residents where the works were delayed. They've now run out of their 12 months council tax exemption and could face having to pay the council tax for a property that they can't actually occupy. So what we could do is target some of this money to be used for that sort of situation. Each case would be considered on its merits by either myself or the benefits manager. So what I'm proposing is that we award a base £200 to each council tax support claimant, and that will mean that we'll keep back around £60,000 to do with these other types of awards, where there are specific cases of hardship. Some of those might go to help people who are on council tax support with bigger bills and give them more help, or it might go to people, like I've mentioned, that are not on council tax support.
Thank you.
The second part of the report deals with changes to the policy for council tax discretionary discounts. To award the hardship payments that I've just been talking about, rather than change our own local council tax support scheme, which you might have thought would be the obvious route, the government have suggested we don't do that because that's very complicated and technical. But instead, we award the £200 and so on as a local discount under this section 13A1C policy. So because of that, we had to review the policy in any case. We also found earlier in the year, when we wanted to give awards again that were government funded for people affected by flooding, that we had to adjust the scheme. So I wanted to make it sort of future-proof, if you like, and ask members to approve so that in the future, if there was government-funded assistance to help residents, I didn't have to come back to you each time, that there was some flexibility within the programme that allowed me to administer the awards in that sort of situation where we were getting grant funding. We also took the opportunity to review the policy for other reasons, such as reflecting what we'd learned as good practice from other local authorities. And there is one final area that I'd like to draw to members' attention, and that's a recommendation that we allow a discretionary council tax relief where there are age-designated properties facing the empty homes premium who are suffering, where the residents, not the homes, the residents are suffering undue hardship. What I mean by this is that you'll recall that some time ago we introduced an empty homes premium, and the purpose of that was to try and get empty homes occupied rather than having to build even more. And that's been quite successful. Rob Coggins and I agreed we would do a review on that and bring it back to council or committee. Due to the time that's required and the amount of work already on agendas for meetings, we've not been able to bring that report. But because we know that some council taxpayers are facing undue hardship, I thought it might be appropriate to bring that element of the report here. So what some people have told us who occupy age-designated properties is that they're facing undue hardship. The age-designated properties that I'm referring to, these are generally specific accommodation that's can only be occupied by older people usually. So these are the types of, often they're blocks of sheltered accommodation that can only be occupied by people over a certain age. The problem is that we know of some of these complexes where a resident might die, the estate is left to deal with the property, and some of them have been on the market for quite a long time, more than 2 years, so we apply the empty homes premium. But despite several reductions in the price, people cannot sell these properties. So what I'm recommending is that we allow a discretionary discount. So in certain circumstances where there's evidence that people have done their best to market these properties and not been able to sell them, that we consider a relief to remove the empty homes premium. They'll still have to pay the basic council tax. This is just removing the premium. Hopefully that will help the handful of people that have been in touch with us saying that they're facing hardship.
Okay, thank you.
And finally, I'd like to make one last point, and that is, I didn't mention it in the report, but I have had the help of Lin Cheong to do an equality impact assessment, and there have been no problem areas identified. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, a comprehensive statement from Karen, which shows the hard work behind the scenes that's gone into this, due diligence, and may I say also common sense applied to this, which is quite appropriate. So I'm happy to move the recommendations, Chair, and also allow the discretionary discount. I would like an update at some time in the future for the benefit of the council, Karen, given that there's, is it 70 cases since April? 76 cases since April. It'd be interesting to see what the impact is, say, by Christmas.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Hobson.
Chair, I'm happy to second these recommendations. It shows a pragmatic approach to grant funding, and I absolutely agree with Karen to future-proof government funding assistance makes absolute sense. I'm glad that we do have a sympathetic approach to cases of undue hardship and looking at the empty homes premium, and thank her once again, as she's been thanked already this evening, for all her hard work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to go to Councillor Hughes now, and if you could be pertinent, I'd like to get to the next item before 8:30. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know when Karen sleeps. She puts so much work into these reports. Referring to Table 2, I note that what you've done, what has been done in terms of modelling, is to project forward the increases since April, increase in caseload since April. But we've got furlough ending or being changed, and potential increase in unemployment. And I'm wondering whether that is sufficient, that allows for sufficient contingency in giving a £61,000 value for potential future claims. So I was wondering whether any work had been done to estimate the caseload that would fully use up the budget, the amount that government is giving, based on the £200 recommendation. Thank you.
Table 2 does indicate we have allowed, the modelling is based on 2014 cases. We have allowed for further almost 200 cases from where we are now in the modelling. But also the £60,000 that I'm proposing we keep back, and that's partly to allow for that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I will be short. Councillor Hobson is absolutely right. It is a pragmatic report and extremely well thought out. But it's also a report that is delivered with a social conscience. It's a report that's based in the morality. I like to think that we underlies some of the things that we do, and it takes recognition that despite some of the perceptions about Derbyshire Dales being extremely prosperous and well off, we do have residents who are suffering from hardship, and they've been caught up in the circumstances of the virus breakout and its economic impact, and they need taken care of, and that's exactly what this report is intending to do. So I fully endorse it.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Karen's answered one of my questions. Second question is, when do you anticipate this additional award will actually be paid to people?
Karen.
We're waiting for members. We're waiting for this approval tonight, of course. The software is virtually ready. They were going to do it last week, but I think the bank holiday could be a problem. So I think the short answer is probably early September.
Thank you very much. Councillor Addison.
Sorry,
another one.
But
the week after next.
Are people aware of this, or will it come as a surprise to them?
It might be a nice surprise. We'll have to rebill and send letters out.
Right. Councillor Addison, please.
Yeah, just a quick point I'd like to make, Chair. I just was looking at the current Derbyshire Dales unemployment figures. Last July 2019, unemployment was running at 1.1% in the Derbyshire Dales. July this year, it's actually at 3.3%, and I suspect that's going to be way over 10% by the time the furlough scheme ends in October. So I'm just wondering whether there will be any other additional funds that we made available for the hardship that is due to hit us really when the furlough scheme ends. Thank you.
Karen? Was that really rhetorical, really? Karen?
Not aware at the moment of any further funding. The £60,000, if we retain that just for additional caseload, would give us another 300 cases. Given that we've only got 1,800 at the moment, that's is that about 20%? Not very good. It's quite a margin.
All right, thank you very much. This one's been moved and seconded. Could we go to the vote, please, Jackie?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Ellison.
For.
Archer.
For.
Atkin.
For.
Bright.
For.
Buckler.
For.
Bull.
For.
Martin Barefoot.
For.
Sue Barefoot.
For.
Battle.
For.
Donnelly.
For.
Elliott.
For.
Fitzherbert.
For.
Glitter.
For.
Froggatt.
For.
Vaness.
For.
Gamble.
For.
Hill.
For.
Hobson.
For.
Hughes.
For.
Lees.
For.
Tony Morley.
For.
Joel Morley.
For.
Brian.
For.
Paulie.
For.
Birdie.
For.
Ratcliffe.
For.
Rose.
For, Jackie.
Shirley.
For.
Slack.
For.
Sutton.
For.
Wayne. For. And Wakeman.
For.
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. That's carried. Item 14, Derbyshire Dales, Section 106, monitoring fields. I think it's a double up between Caroline and Tim, please. Who's going first?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep this brief for you. As you'll see, this report seeks the approval for the introduction of a charging regime for monitoring of Section 106 obligations, which will enable the District Council to recover its costs associated with monitoring of the Section 106 obligations. Before members give consideration to this, I would just like to highlight a couple of things. Firstly, that whilst we're seeking approval for the fees as indicated, the charging regime for monitoring the Section 106 obligations will be reviewed as part of the annual update of the infrastructure funding statement, and this will ensure that the fees collected reflect the true monitoring costs. And secondly, as Councillor Purdy mentioned earlier, the current white paper consultation planning for the future may have an impact on how Section 106 agreements are dealt with in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Atkin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I'm glad that this report has now come to the council because I know the planning team and the regulatory service and the corporate and customer director have a big input into the time spent on Section 106 agreements and making sure they're fit for purpose and monitoring. So I'm very, very happy to move the recommendations as set out in the report, Chair, and I reserve the right to speak in debate.
Thank you. Councillor Finesse.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to second this. It's very important to fully monitor these 106 conditions, and it is right that developers should pay the cost of that monitoring. So, as I said, I'm very happy to second this. Just a couple of questions, if I may. Any idea how much this would raise in a year, and might it mean an increase in staff to do any extra monitoring that became necessary? Or to do it more effectively?
To be fair, the monitoring can be undertaken with the current resources that we have. We've got a good team in place. I'd have to come back to you with regards to an estimate as to what we think would be recouped under a year. Because at the moment, this is obviously based on previous Section 106s, and moving forward, it'll be the new Section 106 as we enter into in the future.
Yeah, it would be interesting to have that figure if you could do it, please.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Councillor Fitter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm very hopeful of this, and but I think expectations of this will be high in the view of members of the public. We talk about covering costs for admin, physical, and financial elements of this report. I take it that the physical side includes enforcement, and if not, why not? Yes, we've got a good team in place, but one of the bitchiest areas of work that I have is that developers aren't keeping up with the 106 agreements or conditions of planning. So how is this going to benefit? And are we going to have that right number of staff in place to follow this through?
Yes, we currently have the right number of staff in place, and the monitoring takes place on a regular basis on a 6-monthly review. So if a trigger's been hit, we can invoice immediately. And as with any invoice, we follow it up on a 2-weekly basis. And if there's any difficulties in recouping the payments, then we would move forward to some form of legal action. Legal would have to advise on that, obviously.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Archer.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, absolutely support this. It's a very good development, but I do have one quick question. I think S106 is something that comes up a lot in members of the public who feel it's often difficult to work out, and it's not that open a process for people to understand in terms of how the money is allocated, where it's spent, etc. I'm not saying that the council isn't open, is trying to hide anything, but I do think we could make things clearer. I'm wondering, as part of this process, if we're now able to charge an admin fee, could we try to come up with some way of producing a really clear report that really clearly lays out exactly how much money has been generated, where it's been spent, how it's been spent, for members and members of the public to see, just to make sure that everyone understands it a little bit better, because I think it's something that's complex, and we just need some clarity for people so they understand how the money's spent, where it's spent, etc. So we want to really make sure that happens as part of this process. Thank you.
The legislation has actually raised that we now enter into an infrastructure funding statement, which needs to be completed by December of this year, which should give a full report of income and spends, and that will obviously be made available to members of the public and members alike.
Okay, thank you very much. It's now 8:30. I move that we continue and finish this item as per our rules of procedure. I move that. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, Chair.
Jason, please show of hands, everyone. That's unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Wayne, and then Councillor Martin Burford. Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm highly supportive of this. It's about time that we got some funding back for doing this type of work. I'd just like to raise the issue on item 211, where it says that the approach set out in the report is similar to those other local authorities, but sits towards the lower end of the cost recovery. Does that mean we're not asking as much as other authorities? And if so, are we underselling ourselves, bearing in mind all the comments that were gone prior to this about lack of revenue coming into the organisation? Thank you.
I think, to be fair, because it's the first time we've actually had the legislation's changed and allowed us to recoup these costs, we've tried to do a fair and reasonable account of what we expect the expenditure to be. We have found that it's at a slightly lower end, but I think we do need to be fair and reasonable and then reconsider it at a later date when we've got actual current future Section 106 to review, because our monitoring is a lot more adequate than we've potentially had in the past.
Chair, can I just come back, please?
Indeed.
Thank you. Being fair and reasonable to who, though? Are we being fair and reasonable to our communities whose monies we are looking after? Or are we being fair and reasonable to the developers? Because I'm sure the developers, if they were selling us a service, wouldn't be selling it to us at the lower end. Thank you.
I think we're being fair and reasonable in relation to the scale of development. And we've also got to, due to the legislation, we cannot exceed estimated costs. So I think at the moment we're just actually trying to recoup costs what we feel are fair and reasonable to all the council and us, until we've actually got something we can substantiate it on in the future Section 106s.
Thanks, Caroline.
Councillor Martin Burford.
Thank you, Chair. My question has just been asked, but I'd like to applaud this report and recommendation and hope it can be successful in recouping some of our costs. Thank you.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll be very brief, Chair. Yeah, I think it's a good report and I shall be supporting it. Just want to make one little comment. I noticed that 122 is a SIL recommendation, Community of Infrastructure Levy. Being not a part of SIL, we can take this on board, can we?
So can you, sorry, Councillor Slack, can you just refer to which part of the report you were?
Yeah, it's the report, regulations 122 of the, it's a SIL recommendation. It's part of the Community Infrastructure Levy recommendation for this legislation to go through. But we're not in SIL, are we? We never joined it.
No, that's right, but Section 106 agreements are covered under this legislation.
Yeah, just ironic. We had this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we go to the vote, please, Jackie.
Councillor Allison? 4. Archer?
4.
Atkin?
4.
Wright?
Sorry, he's left the meeting. Sorry, he's left.
Buckler?
4.
Bull?
4.
Martin Barefoot?
4.
Sue Barefoot?
4.
Battle?
4.
Donnelly?
4.
Elliott? Councillor Elliott, are you there?
He might have gone. As we move on.
Fitzherbert?
4.
Flitter?
4.
Froggatt?
4.
Ness?
4.
Gamble?
4.
Hill?
4.
Hobson?
4.
Hughes?
4.
Lees?
4.
Tony Morley?
4.
Phil Morley?
4.
O'Brien?
4.
Hawley?
4.
Purdy?
4.
Ratcliffe?
4.
Rose?
4.
4. Did somebody say?
4, Jackie.
Thank you. Shirley?
4.
Black?
4.
Sutton?
4.
Wayne?
4.
Wakeman?
4.
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. I'm terribly sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but we're going to have to defer 15, 16, 17, 18 because of our time restraints according to our procedures. So I'm very sorry for those of you who are waiting for those particular items. But I'd like to finish on the sealing of documents. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm happy to move them, but it's given me now the opportunity to address another lady leaving our quarters, and that, of course, is Jackie. Jackie, you've been a mainstay of all the meetings I've chaired, and I've got nothing but praise and thanks for what you've done, and especially what you've done for this council. You're one of those sort of quiet sort of people that works very hard in the background and is atypical of the hard work of members of staff. So we seem to be saying goodbye to too many people this year. I don't know what we've said or what we've done. I hope it's not catching. But of course, you've got your own path to follow. And all I can say is thanks very much for all the hard work you've put into this authority. I'm sure that you've enjoyed your time here. I just hope that you enjoy the next chapter in your life and wish you all the very best, good health and happy retirement.
Okay. And I'd just like to ask Councillor Flitter to endorse that, and then Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, certainly will, Chair. And I've already made my thanks known to Jackie, and I certainly wish her well in a long and happy retirement.
Okay, Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, I echo that. The one thing that Jackie has always brought is an air of good humour into all the committee meetings that I've certainly attended, and indeed the council meetings in general. So I wish her well, a long and happy retirement.
And I'd just like to ask Councillor Buttle to second the motion.
I'm sorry about that. I'm very happy to second it.
Thank you very much. I think that I won't ask you to do a vote on that, Jackie. Thank you so much for all your help over the past. Hands up, everyone. Thank you very much. Round of applause.
Thank you
Can you
all.
hear me? Good night, ladies
Thank
and
you,
gentlemen.
Jackie.
We will meet
Night,
next
Richard.
week. We will meet next week. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah.
Okay, good
Bye.
night.
Thank you, Jackie. Bye.